Hey everyone, I'm Mike Settele, and this is step 6 of our 10-step SAT study plan. This is a big step. We are going to take our second practice test. So to me, this is kind of like the halfway point of the study plan. I know technically 6 is not halfway between 1 and 10, but it's pretty darn close. And this is an important pivot point for you. It kind of determines whether you're kind of on the upswing with your scores or whether you're struggling. And so we want to make the most of this second practice test. But before we get into that, make sure you hit the like button on this video. I'm just always curious how many people are getting all the way to step 6 and how many are sticking with us to the end. So make sure you do that for me. We are going to take this second practice test. Like I said, it is a big deal. I want you to be nervous about it. That's probably how the real test is going to feel. So hopefully I'm getting you psyched up like it's the real thing. We want to see score improvement here. And that is why our goal is to make sure that we don't make the same mistake twice. If we got some kind of question wrong on practice test 1, we better make sure that we do not get it wrong again on practice test 2. That also goes for the topics we've been working on individual questions. If there's something we've been struggling with, we've hopefully worked on it enough that we are ready to be perfect on it on this second practice test. So make sure you are studying in a way that you are remembering what you've learned and you are able to use it again. If you're not ready for this second practice test, go back. But let's take a look at the tasks we're going to want to accomplish here. They're pretty self-explanatory, but we do want to make sure, like I said, that we are studying a little bit beforehand. Treat this like a real exam, right? You would study the night before a test. You would study the week before a test. If it was a big deal, I want you kind of studying here as well. So I'll put some links in the description here, as always, to kind of put you in the right direction. But some things on my channel that are pretty good to study. First of all, any topic where you felt kind of iffy as you've been going through, go back to it. Go back to the old steps in this plan and just see what kinds of things you've got. There might be certain math topics, certain grammar rules, something that you just don't really feel like you get. Watch the lesson on it again, maybe do those practice questions again, whatever it takes. Make sure that you have a good sense of it so that you don't panic when you see a similar question on this practice test. You can also maybe get some sort of kind of overview summaries of the different topics using my top 10 videos. Some things like the top 10 grammar rules are a good way to just hit a bunch in a short amount of time. I also have a playlist on common SAT weaknesses. That's pretty good if you feel like there's a particular area you're struggling with. Maybe one of those videos can help you just kind of get a little bit different of a perspective on it. But really make sure that you know the big stuff. The stuff we did in step 1 and 2 is the most important. If you are failing to write dumb summaries, failing to plug points into equations, use Desmos at the right moments, that's really bad. If you don't remember the grammar rules, if you don't remember what the word nevertheless means, that's not good. You need to know all the forms of the quadratic equations and be very comfortable with y equals mx plus b. So make sure that you are looking at that. You also might want to refresh your memory on the pacing strategies. And I did have videos for that in, I think, step 3 when we first talked about the practice tests. But as a reminder, make sure in the reading modules, you are starting with the grammar questions so that we are locking in those easy points, the grammar, transitions, and outlines before we get all caught up in the passages. We want to make sure we're doing on this practice test the same kinds of moves we're going to be doing on the real SAT. Now, when we get to the test itself, we've got the blue book practice tests. That's what we're going to take as always. But make sure you are taking the test in a good setting, right? So sit at a desk. Don't lay on your bed. Don't be in the living room, right? Like try to, if you have a bedroom that you can go to that bedroom. If not, then go somewhere else. You can go to a coffee shop. You can go to a library. Go somewhere that's going to put you in the right headspace. So no music playing while you're taking this test, right? It might be comforting, but you're not going to have music playing during the real exam. No pets coming in and out of the room. I don't care that your cat wants to sit on your keyboard. No, get it out of there. Lock the door. Don't let your parents bother you. Tell them to leave you alone. Tell your siblings to leave you alone. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want you taking this practice test in complete silence either, because the real test is going to be a room with lots of people, and some of them are going to get up to go to the bathroom. They're going to have a problem with their computer. They're going to need an extra piece of scratch paper. They're going to have the sniffles and be coughing all the time. There might be a game going on in the field outside the high school. There's lots of things that could be distracting. So it's okay to take the practice tests in an environment that's also a little bit distracting. That's why libraries and coffee shops are great. You can learn how to really focus in on what you're doing and not let other people bother you with their stuff. So also make sure you have all your supplies. You got to have scratch paper, pencils ready to go, maybe a handheld calculator as well. And try to take it in the morning. I think a weekend morning is a great time to do it. Wake up a little earlier. Make sure you have breakfast beforehand. This is kind of just like the time you would take the real SAT. Make sure you do not take it after school. You are going to be tired after a long day of school. Your brain is already kind of used up. So you're going to get a bad score. And like I said, we want good scores on this practice test. We need scores to go up from what they did on the first practice test. So if you are taking it in a bad state of mind, if you are not focused, if you are tired, you're going to get a bad score. And it's going to really not be great for the rest of this 10-step plan when we really need to get closer and closer to the SAT. Don't neglect the review either. Remember that this practice test is not just a one-day affair, okay? We want the studying, the testing, and the review to take several days. In fact, make sure you do not review the test on the day you took it. Review it the next day, right? Let 24 hours go by. Your brain is going to be so tired after this test, you are not going to be able to learn from your mistakes. It's just going to go in one ear and out the other. So take time. You don't even need to look at the scores right away if you don't want. But take a day and then start reviewing. You're going to use my videos, as always, to review the practice test. It's much better than anything else out there, certainly better than the College Board explanations. And make sure that you also are saving your bookmarks. We talked about that for our first practice test. We want to make sure that we are marking questions as we go, and that since the Blue Book app is not going to save those bookmarks, we need to save them on our scratch paper so we can review more questions later. So again, why are we bookmarking questions? Not just because we want to go back to them if we have more time. We are bookmarking them because we can't prove the answer. We are relying too much on instinct and feeling and logic. We want to have proof. We want to have evidence. If you don't have that, yes, you should still answer the question, but mark it for review. Make sure you go back and see what would have been enough to prove that answer. What could you have done differently? That also goes for things that you do prove right, but maybe you took too long, right? So if it takes you a long time to solve a question, bookmark it. There might have been a more efficient way, and I will tell you that more efficient way, and then next time you can do that more efficient way. This is especially important if it's taking you too long to start a question. If you're staring at it for a while wondering what to do, that's not good either. Remember, with our if X, then Y step, we learned a lot of things that we should be doing as soon as we see a certain word or a certain kind of clue in a question. We know what to do to kind of get the ball rolling. We don't need to have the whole plan. But we do need to have something that's going to get it going. And so we want to make sure if we don't have strong if-then logic for certain questions, we're able to kind of put that in place. So make sure you bookmark those as well. And there are going to be some cases where you will have mistakes on questions that are hard, and that's fine. We don't want to make mistakes, though, on certain areas that we've been studying a lot, right? So there are unforgivable mistakes on these practice tests, and that's what we're really trying to prevent. Things like the simplest grammar rules. You can't get something wrong because you forgot what a colon does. If there's a question where you could have plugged points into equations and you didn't, that is unforgivable. So when that's part of our review, is try to think, especially through my videos, I usually just say it, we want to make sure that there are certain things that we are not getting wrong. So really prioritize those topics that we've kind of focused on a lot in these past few steps. Big picture, again, we don't want to make the same mistake twice. That's just wasted points, right? So every question is about 10 or 20 points. Every wrong answer costs you about 10 or 20 points. So to put that in perspective, if we want to improve our score, if we just get 5 more questions right in every section, in reading and in math, that's 10 questions total. That's about 100 points, maybe more. So it doesn't take much to improve the score. So, you might be doing the test and feeling like you're still getting a lot wrong. That's fine, as long as we are getting fewer questions wrong than we did last time, right? We want to kind of keep inching our way up. And so that gets to the priorities a little bit, right? Our main priority, like I said, is the scores. You need to see improvement on this test, but it does not necessarily need to be the score that your goal is, right? So if you're not quite at your goal, that's okay too. We are only at step 6. We still have time. We're going to take another practice test in step 9. So my advice is you're trying to improve, but you're not trying to be absolutely perfect. And just generally, I find that people who are shooting for an 800 in a subject usually kind of shoot themselves in the foot, and they're not able to get it because the very fact that they're trying to be perfect is what costs them even a close score to an 800. So what I mean by that is basically, remember that you're probably going to have some hard questions where you're going to have to guess or maybe not prove the answer completely just because there's a time limit and some questions are hard. So that's okay, right? Don't shoot for that 800. Let's just shoot for at most like a 750 and just try to do the best as you can, but be okay with giving up on a few questions as long as you're getting everything else right. It will work out for the best. So just remember that. Our scores are an important piece of this, but perfection is not really the goal at this point, but neither is experience. You should be familiar with practice tests and SATs at this point. You should not be surprised when you start running out of time in the hard modules. You should know to expect that and have a plan ready to go. You should not be surprised by any of the topics. Maybe it's one that you need to do a little bit more memorization on, but everything should be pretty familiar at this point. You should not be surprised by hard questions either. Yes, you will get to hard questions where you're like, I have no idea what to do. But remember that the topics are the same ones we've already been studying. So just try to put stuff on your scratch paper, see what happens, write some dumb summaries. You might be surprised how much you actually know. So there will be hard questions, even though technically we've studied all the things we need for the test. So it's just the way the SAT goes. But you really can't be forgetting about some very obvious things that we got in our first practice test experience. We have to remember that the reference chart is there for geometry, that Desmos is there for the calculator. Some people kind of forget about Desmos for some reason. We want this test to start to feel like a routine, because if it feels routine, that's when we stop being as nervous. So it's okay to be nervous now, but we're gonna kind of try to build that nervousness into our process so that way when we get to the real test, we're at least comfortable with the nervousness. I can't promise that it's gonna go away, but at least if we can manage it, we won't be as bothered by it as we're taking the test. So before you go, just remember, like this video if you've made it this far. It really helps me to understand how far people are getting. But also come back to this video once you take the second practice test and get your scores. Share them. Did you improve? Did your score go up a lot, a little, not at all? I can maybe give some advice. But also, even beyond the score itself, do you feel like you're progressing? Do you feel like you're getting the right things right and getting some stuff right that you used to get wrong? I want to know about that stuff. So feel free to leave your comments with your own sense of your progress at this point. Like I said earlier, we are going to take one more practice test in step 9, but we are getting to the point now where we've kind of learned everything we need for the SAT. So the remaining steps are more about kind of refining our process so that we're not wasting points in needless ways. So hopefully it feels like that on this test, that at least everything kind of feels a little familiar. Once again, I'm Mike Settele. I hope this is psyching you up for the second practice test. Best of luck on it, and I will see you in step 7, hopefully with some better scores.